Oh, welcome everybody to this second Lunch and Learn for the Conversations for Change program. This is our new podcast series produced by the Innate Coach and hosted by myself, Dr. Helen May, and Andrea Morrison. Together, we are exploring how small shifts in the way we communicate and converse can create healthier and more inclusive, compassionate, and connected workplaces. This episode is supported by York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority using funding from the Department of Work and Pensions Get Britain Work Economic. Each episode is recorded with a live audience as part of our Lunch and Learn series and used to create our Lunch and Learn Conversations for Change podcast. For those here today, at a certain point in the conversation, we'll invite you to join in to share your comments, your insights, your personal experience, or your practical tips, or even to ask a question. Each episode, we are exploring a new theme. You can expect real conversations with experts in their field, with opportunity for interaction and questions, encouraging reflection, curiosity, and practical action. So whether you're a seasoned employer just starting to grow your team or simply looking to develop your leadership skills, we hope that you'll enjoy this Lunch and Learn podcast and hear something fresh and new. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Andrea, who's going to introduce the episode.
So in this episode, everyone, we are diving into what it really means to lead with humanity. So we're very excited because especially in these times of change and uncertainty, it's incredibly important. And the quality of our human connections at work really matter. We all talk about wanting to build a values-led and people-led first organizations, but how do we actually do that practically? How do we bring that care and compassion and ethical awareness into the way we work and lead every day? We'll also explore how to spot and challenge some of those self-limiting beliefs that can hold us back and what it really takes to choose love over fear, curiosity over judgment, and hope over cynicism. Because leading with humanity isn't just an idea, it's a very practical way to create cultures where everyone can strive and bring their whole selves to work. So we hope that this is going to promise to be an inspiring and thought-provoking conversation about how we can build more humane, values-driven workplaces, one conversation at a time. And we are very delighted today to have Professor Divine Charura here, MBE, should I say, as a guest on our podcast. Divine is a professor of counselling psychology at York St John University, as well as a practicing counselling psychologist, psychotherapist, and coaching psychologist. His practice and research span trauma, mental health, love, culture, and the transformative power of human relationships. He has spent many years combining clinical practice, research, and teaching in the UK and internationally. There is so much more that we could say about his work right now, but as you'll hear, Divine's depth of insight and humanity really speak for themselves once we get into the conversation. And believe you me, when we've been talking to him, we literally wished we could have videoed and recorded every single conversation because it is so inspiring. So welcome, Divine, for joining us today. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here. But first of all, perhaps you could share with us a little bit about your journey and how the theme of leading with humanity became so important to you.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's certainly wonderful to be here. And thank you for that kind introduction. It's great to see colleagues here today and all of us doing this amazing transformational work. And today's conversation, really, I'd like to talk about why it's important to lead with humanity. I'm a counseling psychologist, I'm a coach, and my journey starting maybe 25 years ago when I did my undergrad at Leeds Uni really has been about working with people, and has at the center has been about humanity. And what do I mean by that? And for me, that's about working with others, working with other human beings in ways that center dignity, that center relational presence, that center compassion, love, and authentic connection. And therefore, it goes beyond techniques or goal setting, but is a way of honoring other people as a whole persons who are embedded in a culture, who have a history, an identity, who have emotions and have relationships and lived experiences we can be curious about. So whether I was on the mental health wards, or whether I'm in a boardroom in Aldgate in London, or whether I'm in my consultation room seeing clients or couples or families, that really is at the heart of where my journey has brought me to.
That's lovely. Thank you. So when you talk about leading with humanity, particularly in the workplace, what does that really mean to you in kind of practical terms?
That's a great question. Well, let's try for the podcast and those listening to give 7 quick points. Yeah. I think it's about seeing the other person as a whole person who is a storied being. So rather than reducing people to problems or performance matrix or to roles, we see them as a whole person. And the second point is it's about practicing presence and empathy and unconditional positive regard. So that comes from humanistic psychology, the work of Carl Rogers and others, where our genuine presence and our deep listening and our way of not judging others is central to help people to grow. The third point I would say is about honoring our different cultural identities and interconnectedness. And at that point, if I use my own example, I would say, I'm a Black British man of African heritage. And what's infused in my way of being and life is a philosophy of collectiveness. We would call it Ubuntu philosophy. And you'd heard Nelson Mandela and others talk about this idea of I am because we are. And that's about community and relationships. And then it's also about holding power ethically and humbly. So this idea of power is really important. If you're a leader, you have power, but how do you use power with rather than power over? Then the last few points really would be about how to lead with compassion and curiosity and courage. So I would call those the 3 C's, and always choosing curiosity over judgment as an example, and love over fear. And then the last 2 points are around supporting the other person to grow, wholeness, not just their goals. So for me to get to where I am, I've been blessed with amazingly wonderful leaders who were able to help me to develop as a person and continue to. And then lastly, the 7th point for me is about embracing vulnerability and authenticity as a person. So that's what I would mean by humanity. Maybe in numerology, 7 is a number of completion. So there we go.
Yeah, no, I think that's lovely, and it's really, it's very comprehensive. I think I'd just like to pick up on that last point about vulnerability, because I think that's a word that's like bandied around, in lots of different places, particularly in psychology and leadership. But what do you feel that really means for a leader to be vulnerable? Is it bearing your whole soul, telling everybody what's going on in your life? Or how do you see it being used in leadership?
Oh, Andrea, etymology. Well, let me go back. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the word vulnerable comes from the word vulnus in Latin, which means, in some ways, opening yourself up to be wounded. So that's the etymology of the word. But this opening ourselves up to be wounded is not so much a physical wounding. Well, in some senses, if you're vulnerable, in some places that might be. But in the sense of leadership is, rather than have defenses in which I'm the leader, I'm going to use my power and you're not going to see me, I'm going to be a blank screen, you're leading with curiosity. This idea of love over fear, hope over cynicism, curiosity over judgment. And this is about risk, right? There's risk that you're risking to show your humanity as the other risks to show theirs. And in that way, we move from a superficial level of, how are you? I'm fine, to really having community and relationship, what we might call in coaching and in therapy terms, relational depth. And when people feel that they can be open with us, then that is a space where there's potential for growth. And within that, of course, we do talk about professional boundaries and so on. So for me, that vulnerability is daring to risk knowing the other and the other knowing us, in the confines, of course, of the values of the organization and boundaries. So that's what I would say we talk about when we talk about vulnerability.
Yeah, I like that. Helen, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. You wrote with Professor Medlock around conversations that matter, and it struck me when you were talking about the definitions about the importance of conversations, in the heart of it as the way of interacting between two people. So could you explain what you meant by conversations that matter, and why, and what makes a conversation humanizing?
Yes. So yes, with Professor Gordon Medlock, essentially what we were interested in is in leaders and coaches drawing from a humanistic psychological perspective. Where we started was, being a leader is not, in some ways, a hat that you just wear and then you put down at lunchtime and then you wear again. That's one way, that's one style, right, of leadership. But really, there's a way of leading in organizations and facilitating growth in others through our own ontology. Now, what we might call ontology is our way of being in the world, what we hold as truth, what we hold as our values, and how that is always evolving and always shifting as we learn, as we engage in conversations, as we become curious. So in a sense, we would say, where we started this conversation today, hopefully by the time we end, we would have been influenced in our own transformation, because we are learning through relationships. So that's the first bit. Then my colleague Gordon, he tends to call it ontological dynamism, right? So we constantly moving and shifting. And a part of that is being able to be curious, being able to apologize. That's where some of the vulnerability comes. If we get things wrong, as a leader, I think one of the greatest things we can do is to have the leadership humility to hear others' perspectives and to apologize when we get it wrong, rather than to be forceful in our way of being. And then the third bit that conversations we've been having are drawn from ideas on coordinated management of meaning theories. I think these were developed by Barnett Peers and Vernon Cohen in the 80s. And they're about lived experiences and stories. So they tended to use the acronym LUT, which is LUUUUTT. And what that stood for is, all of us as human beings have 7 types of stories. We have lived stories. So we bring our experiences of what's happened in our lives. Then one of the U's is we have unknown stories, a part of us that's unknown. Then we have untold stories. We also have unheard stories. People have never heard before. Then we have the stories that we tell publicly, and so on. And so this is really important, that in our work, and certainly in my journey towards leading with humanity, we've gone into recognizing how much people's lives are shaped by the stories that they live. And over time, I've come to see that genuine presence, and this is the point, and the last point, as a leader requires not only attending to what others are saying, those we're working with, those where we might be coaching, or those we might be leading organizations, but it's also about honoring the deeper narratives that sit beneath the language, right? So how are you? I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm great. But also honoring the silence. We've not heard from this person, or they're not contributing to this conversation, or, they've not contributed to this idea. So what's going on, so we can inquire. Also their identity, and that's about intersectionality, and we can maybe later talk about that, but also their experiences. So these ways of being in the world have shaped how I practice my work in reaffirming leadership with humanity. not simply as a stance, but as an ethical practice that's grounded in recognizing the wholeness of others. So it's a lot there,
that's great.
but you did ask.
Yeah, there's a lot there, absolutely. And it made me think about the importance of learning with others, as well as, that kind of, that we're constantly, that transactional nature of conversation, and that you pick up on what somebody's saying, and then you're thinking deeper and differently about a particular topic because of what they say.
Yes.
And then them thinking likewise. Sorry,
it
Andrew.
just reminded me in coaching when you first come to it and you're encouraged to ask one more question. Just ask one more question.
Yes.
Don't just take that at first value what your client or coachee might say to you. Be curious and just go a little further and see what you can uncover. And I think and we have many leaders on this call today, and thinking about leadership in practical and real terms, why would you say that that this humanity approach and understanding people more and really having that human connection and being curious and more compassionate, why is it important today in today's workplace? What change do you see when it's present?
Well, there's a number of things. So let me answer this in three short ways. The first bit comes from neuroscience, and elsewhere I've written about love and done a podcast with some wonderful neuroscientists, and our understanding of how, as human beings, we grow through love. So many studies that have been done, and some of the most famous ones, which are really awful, were to do with Romanian orphans in homes, where if they did an experiment where they said, in a dormitory, we're going to feed, this is a very long time ago, the children were given food and water, but not much interaction. And what happened was the children started to die. The young children started to die. And the hypothesis that psychologists and coaching psychologists and neuroscientists have drawn from that was that those who were nearer the door, this is kind of metaphorically, those who were nearer the door would have some kind of human connection. They could look. And we know that when we are born as human beings, our limbic system is developing, and it's what we call experience expectant. Now, what's in the limbic system? You've got the hypothalamus, and which helps partly to do with regulation in our bodies, homeostasis, if you like. You have the hippocampus, which is partly helps with long-term memory and so on. And this is experience expectant. So in order for us as human beings to grow, we require a particular environment for us to grow. Now, this environment, now this is not a neuroscience podcast, so we'll pause at that. But this environment, and a lot of these studies, what they say time and time again is the importance of environment, the importance of love, humanity, connection to facilitate growth. Now, in the workplace, and we need it throughout the rest of our lives, right? We have a pandemic, if you like, of older people and loneliness, and people that die of unexplained heart failure, and so on and so forth and so forth. And the impact of loneliness on our bodies, of isolation. Now, in the workplace, what we're thinking, the question would be, what's the best environment that we can have in order for us not just to survive, but to thrive? So as a leader, as a coach, I'm always thinking, what is the best environment? So that's the first part, is thinking about the neuroscience, the environment. The second part is the likes of Maslow, Carl Rogers, and many others. They all agreed in terms of the environment, what we can do to facilitate that is through our presence, through unconditional positive regard, not being judgmental, but being curious, and through empathy. Now, That's what we can do as leaders in every conversation. And then the last bit is, why is it so important, given what you said, apart from growth and blossoming and thriving? For me, it's an ethical standpoint. If I truly believe as an ethical leader that I would like others in their humanity to thrive, to do the best, then I do my best to facilitate that. In the face of organizational pressures, performance demands, hierarchical systems and power, in a culture that's full of fear and defensiveness or blame, in a culture where we're wrestling with ideas about diversity and equity and inclusion, that's all of that is important in order to help others to thrive. And then when we do that, we have a culture in which not only the other blossoms, but I also blossom, and then hopefully we continue to do good in the world.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I talk to leaders about change and about culture, what comes up a lot is about the what connects people around what we're trying to achieve, the mission, the vision, the kind of values of the organization. I think that's a good place to start with, the values, because a lot of what you're saying connects. Most organizations will want to be values led and will want to be thinking about the types of values that they would like to demonstrate and for their employees to demonstrate within the workplace. So is values a good place to start with this, do you think?
Well, I couldn't agree more. When I'm often working with leaders, or if I'm in one-to-one coaching relationships and people come for consultation, or if it's group coaching, we always start with, what are your values? And that in a sense, for me, precedes even goals. We're back to that ontological piece. What are your values? And as a leader, and this is the work of Eric Dehaan in his writing on relational leadership, is what he calls it, is the idea that leaders can consciously choose to work with the values and to choose love over fear, curiosity over judgment, hope over cynicism. And this strengthens our commitment to lead with humanity. So I think that's maybe for everyone on the call, for all of us to always think, particularly when I face a challenge, I always think, what are my values? What are my core values? I really believe in humanity. I believe in equality, in equity, in love. Even at times when I've been asked to come in terms of consulting, and people said, "Oh, we can't believe we've received this complaint," and I'll go, look. One of our values in terms of democracy is everyone should have a voice, including those that want to complain. It's awful. We might not like it, So even in moments when we're challenged, to come back to our values, equality, equity, connection, relationship, making a difference, cultivating hope in the context of uncertainty, are all things that I hold dearly. And then from there, it's like, what then? How then do these values match or not match with the task at hand, the conversation at hand? And yesterday when we were talking, I gave an example where I said sometimes, many years ago when I was working for an agency as a healthcare assistant, and the agency might ring me and say, we've got these two places where you could go work. And sometimes I would choose to go to the place where I'd get 2 or 3 buses, and it was paying less per hour because I felt that what they were doing was in line with my values than the place that was nearer and was paying £2 more. So and we're all faced with that, right, today in terms of where we work, the kind of work we do, how we want to work, what our values are.
I think that's very, very powerful. And what I wanted to pull out from that is I see a lot of businesses that have their values. And, somebody in an office somewhere has come up with the values. And what I'm hearing is very much that these values have to come from individuals, they're individual values. And I guess what I wanted to ask you is, how can businesses bring their values to life, but do so from an individual, almost grassroots level, so that all of the workforce really feel that they have been heard and that they They are their values.
Mm. Mm. Well, that's a great question, Andrea. I think for me, what values are, the way I see it, and in working with leaders and working with organizations, let's do three quick things. The first is that this is from Taoism, right? We're going into Eastern philosophy now. And there's a saying, the qualities of a great leader are that when all is said and done, the people say we did it. So that's about, do we have the buy-in of people really believing in this thing that we're doing, believing in this product? Is our environment, is the culture living it? Is it demonstrating the thing that we're doing? So I think that's really key. The other bit, if it's whatever product it is or whatever service we're providing, can we see those who are at the receiving end embracing it and seeing it as a mirror of themselves? So a classic example, and I hope it's okay to give, is years ago when I was working in the NHS, we used to have a standard. In the service you're working in, is the service you're providing the service that if your grandma had, you would say, that was brilliant for my grandma. And that's about values, right? Because that was tapping into people's values about their family. So if you're going to do A, B, C, D in health, and it wasn't good enough for your grandma, it shouldn't be good enough for the next person who you don't know. So that's really about values. And then the third bit, if we draw into the work I've done with Gordon Medlock, and again, some of the work of Dehan, the invitations we give is to encourage us as leaders to foster cultures in which there is compassion, there's curiosity, there's inquiry, and to create spaces where not only ourselves, but also those we work with and those we support can thrive.
Nice.
Thank you. Really nice.
Can I come back to something you said earlier, which was about stories and lived experience? I was really interested in how we bring that into the workplace from a point of view. You talked about untold stories, the kind of things that people don't say about themselves. Not everybody in the workplace gives their whole self. How do we kind of understand people, that kind of wholeness of people and things that perhaps they won't want to share in the workplace? You know, there are things that people wouldn't want others to know. But yet we want to understand people as whole people. So how do we navigate that in a workplace context?
Yeah. So that's great. I mean, this is what I would refer to as an ecology or a system that facilitates us to bring our authentic selves. Now, what that is in, and I'm going to, I had a great leader once, manager, his name was Chris. Thank you, Chris. And what Chris said to me, look, Divine, you're managing a lot of colleagues and you're a great human being and you're doing well. When it's time for the personal development reviews, PDRs, you're doing it on time, you're helping people. But there's one thing, Divine, that I think would be helpful. When was the last time you just sat down with some of the core team to have a coffee? So I kind of said, Chris, I don't drink tea or coffee. You know, I'm trying to get out of it. But the dialogue, what he says is, you know, look, sometimes the quality of a great leader is, this is not about everyone should share their story. It's about creating an environment in which something else might emerge that is relational, beyond the task-orientated aspect. And so what I then did is now and again, I'd say to colleagues, one at a time, you know what, it'd be nice to get a coffee down in the refectory for half an hour just to say hello. There's no agenda. I'm not wanting to say how's what going, how you doing with that task. And what emerged was really amazing was, I had a huge team, but I could do that with maybe 3 or 4. And some of the ones who I'd always felt distant from, they didn't know much about me and I didn't know much about them. They might have said, oh, it was my son's birthday this weekend. Oh, congratulations, what's your son's name? And they would only say as much as they wanted. Others didn't, but what actually began to emerge was relationship. relationship. And then foster an environment that was relational. So when we talk about conversations for change, and it's beyond having surface dialogue that is led by, do this task, have you done it, well done, or actually you're lagging behind and you need coaching, that's leading with humanity. And again, this comes back to my maybe own ontology. I am because we are. You know, if you thrive, then I thrive. And it really helps me to recognize the visible, the invisible. And then the last point comes from, when I often ask people questions, comes from presence. And the idea of presence is that sometimes if something awful has happened in your life, and a lot of people are saying, you know, maybe my condolences or whatever it is, or that was awful. There might be one or two people who don't say anything, but they come and they might say, if you need anything, don't hesitate to let me know. Now, you wouldn't have gone into disclosing everything that happened, but in that moment, their presence, their contact, the depth of relationship, the depth of humanity deeply touches you, sometimes beyond those that have said a lot. So for me, that's really about the ecology of the system. And as a leader, I often ask myself, what environment do I want to work in? And maybe there's another little point, which is awareness of difference and diversity, right? Being aware of different faiths or cultures of the people in my team. And when festivities are happening, I don't set a date for a big meeting or training on a day when it's a festivity that really matters to them. I don't, checking my own biases and my own challenges. And I remember being in one team and they said, we're going to play a Christmas game and we would love every one of you to bring a picture when you were a baby, and we're going to guess who was who as a baby. Now, to be fair, I do like that game. But actually, immediately at the time, I kind of thought, well, great. Like, I'm going to bring my picture and everyone is going to look at it and they're going to know it's me straight away. They're not going to mistake. So I'm going to be outside of the sentence of that. So in terms of inclusivity, it's just having the awareness of the 7 domains: gender, ethnicity, social class, religion, disability, neurodiversity, age, sexuality, and so on. That these stigmatized identities, that we just hold them and we integrate them into our way of being, so others feel deeply seen, they feel safe, and they feel accepted.
Yeah, and as you say, that comes back to the environment that you set up.
You're right.
In which inclusion is the norm, not the exception. Yeah, absolutely. And I heard there about the importance of space, creating that space for your colleagues to have those conversations, not necessarily with an agenda, as you say, but to hold space and give time, even when we're busy.
I think it was very powerful what you shared there. And again, what I'm hearing very much is that looking at people as individuals.
Yes.
I think what I hear a lot is that, well, I don't want to do it wrong, and I have a policy on this, and everything's kind of quite a blanket approach to leadership. And this is really pulling it all back to something that's really quite simple and quite straightforward, which is seeing the human being that is in front of you. And I'm wondering how that helps in today's kind of businesses, business climate, and the struggles and complexity that businesses are faced with, particularly in terms with online working or hybrid working. How can we encourage those individual relationships, and why is it so important? I mean, I think we've covered some of it, but I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, so let me talk to 3 distinct pillars. The first one is about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the challenges around that. Now, I'm a researcher, and some of the research I've done with colleagues around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a lot of research that we review in the literature unanimously says when a workplace fails to recognize diversity in all these domains, and the intersectionality, because we're not just one thing. We're not just a woman in her 50s or a black man who was a professor, etc. We have whole intersectionalities of privilege, challenge, and so on. When a workplace fails to recognize the diversity and the intersectionality, and then people don't feel seen, they begin to feel unsafe. And that this then undermines the relationship with the leader, with the organization. It makes it harder for us to choose curiosity over judgment or hope over cynicism. So that's the first thing, is how do we work with diversity, equality, equity, inclusion in ways that all of us feel seen, all of us, because we're diverse human beings, right? Diversity is not the other. Diversity is all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is about conflicting values and organizational misalignment. So what we see in research and what I see in leaders and working with leaders is when an organization stated values, so they say, we're compassionate, we offer dignity, we offer care, and then there's a mismatch between that and its actual practices, then the leaders face the tension of navigating this contradiction. It actually serves me well as a leader if the values we hold match what we do in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And that this mismatch can then erode trust and make human-centered leadership harder to enact. So if you're running, for example, here in healthcare, and you say, yes, we're all about compassion, dignity, and care, and then we see on the news or on a program that actually the opposite is happening, then people start shouting the leader must go. Because ultimately there's a kind of, so there's a piece here about trust and conflicting values and organizational misalignment. So putting the space and time we need to facilitate values to grow is important. And then the last bit is about dealing with the rapid change, uncertainty, and instability. And in periods of restructuring that many businesses and organizations are facing, or given the technological change and the fast pace that things are going, or resources are cut, this creates anxiety within the organization. So many years ago, I used to be involved in teaching on the psychodynamics in organizations. So the anxiety that's felt in the organization, and that pushes people towards control rather than relational responsiveness. And fear of the unknown can overshadow the capacity to lead with humanity. So for me, this is why these three pillars are important: diversity, equity, and inclusion, working with the conflicting values and organizational misalignment, and putting time to ensure that we really support people to hold the values, and then dealing with the rapid change, uncertainty, and instability. If we can do that, then that facilitates our capacity to lead with humanity.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, some nice points there. And I think, remaining sensitive to intersectionality and to individuals comes back to not oversimplifying or overgeneralizing or believing what somebody's lived experience of, I come back to my daughter is deaf, and her lived experience of deafness is different to another person's lived experience of deafness, because she's in an environment and it's different, and she interacts with the environment, and then her conversational needs are different. So, that presumption or need to know around what everybody's heterosexual, what's the word? I can't think of the word, but has the same in that space. Their lived experience is completely different, and recognizing that is really important. So the EDI, from an EDI perspective, I think that kind of recognizing that diversity and understanding diversity in all its forms.
And for me, that's about also how then do we cultivate this environment. And for me is, years ago, and I still do it now and again, used to run a workshop on questions, asking the right questions of self, first and foremost, but of others. So we might ask the question, of myself, but of the team I work with. And I often say this in the wonderful team I work in: are we missing something, folks? What might I be missing as a leader? But as a team, are we missing something? what story isn't being told yet? Who are we missing? And this aligns with the humanistic psychology ideas around empathy. And then making psychological safety a daily practice. So we can humanize the workplace by acknowledging uncertainty. There's nothing worse than being in a team where there's an elephant in the room and it's not named. So acknowledging uncertainty, inviting dissenting views, right? There might be views I don't agree with, but actually with humanity, let's hear them. Let's hear them. And you know, sometimes I change my mind. Do you know what? You've got a point. Validating emotional responses is important. Normalizing help seeking. It's okay to ask for help if we're struggling. And this psychological safety that we know that allows people to bring their whole selves then to work. It's okay to be me at work as a human being, working with other human beings.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you just took the question out of my mouth. It was like you were reading my mind. You know, it was, you know, how can we practically take steps to create these environments where our stories can be heard and told, and we can connect and we can be vulnerable. So if you were to, you know, speak to a leader listening to this today, what's the one thing you would say to them would be the first step they could take to start creating that psychological safe culture? Because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about creating an environment where we're not judged. We, you know, we don't feel like we can't speak, you know, all of that. So as leaders, what would you say would be I'm going to say the first thing, but maybe the top 3 things that they could do to work towards that would make a difference?
Yes. Look, in moments like this, because I have different ontologies in that, you know, I draw a lot on other wisdoms that are not Eurocentric, as well as Eurocentric. So if I look at in some of the indigenous African cultures, when you say hello to someone, you slow down. And that's to create a moment of genuine presence. You know, so a classic example, I hope my mom and dad don't mind me, you know, they live 15 minutes away. If I go in, my mom will open the door, oh, hi, darling, you know, give me a cuddle and a kiss. Hello, come in. And then we sit down and there might be like 2 minutes of silence. And then I'll go, how was your day? Now that silence is pregnant because it's saying, I'm fully here. Now that's not just, you know, alien to us. You will notice the indigenous peoples of New Zealand and Australia do the same. You know, they'll meet forehead to forehead in silence. I was working in Canada twice this year. The indigenous Squamish people, you know, will do the same as they receive you, and they slow down. And for me, coaching, as it were, is embedded in these cultures.
Yeah.
Now, coming to the question, a good leader slows down and creates moments for genuine presence. You know, so you come into my office, I don't go, how was your day? And I'm multitasking. Yeah. Humanity, a leader can, I schedule brief points to check in with myself, to check in with the team without multitasking, giving full attention. And this, we know from research, reduces anxiety and builds relational trust. Now, we know this from attachment theory and some of the research we do in attachment theory in terms of a primary caregiver and the family. If as primary caregivers you're doing that, you foster an environment in which there's trust. So the first point, slow down, create moments of genuine presence. We learned that from other cultures and Eastern wisdoms and so on. Make psychological safety daily practice. We've already spoken about that. Prioritize development over performance alone. So we live in a culture where performance, profit, product. If it's in academia, we talk about how many do we have in the class? Have we marked? Have we got the marks out? But do we know the students? Do we know the person? And how do we prioritize development of a performance? This is my last point on this. A human-centered leader invests in people's growth by offering conversations that are curious and open, by supporting learning goals, by providing constructive feedback compassionately, by recognizing progress, not perfection. And another time we'll talk about perfection. You know, I think I have straight to perfectionism. Like, it's not done yet, but and all of this echoes our belief in the person's natural tendency for growth. So to come full circle, being a human-centered leader is not something that we do or not do, but is a byproduct of our belief and our commitment to the growth that others can have in the right environment. Same with belonging. We don't say, you belong, you belong. You know, we've spoken about this. Is we offer an environment and then that thing emerges, right? That's, people can see it. We human-centered, we're person-centered.
It's
Humanity.
an outcome, not an input.
Right, right.
Yeah. And I hear, you know, that it's like, it's naturally occurring, you know, it's not something you can do to somebody. You can't make them connect with you. You can't make them feel belonged. You know, it is, it's something that, as you say, naturally occurs. That's incredible. Thank you so much, Divine. Before I open it up to the floor, I just want to check with Helen. Do you have any other questions?
No, I think
or anything you'd like to
bring others in.
I think it's
now.
It's a good opportunity and a good point to bring others in. So for all of you who are here live, this is your opportunity to ask your questions of Divine, or make any comments, or share any insights that you might have, having listened to him now. So feel free to I was going to say unvideo yourself, but turn your videos off and unmute yourselves so that we can see and hear you. And if you have any questions, then feel free to just raise your hand and go for it.
And Andrea, can I just say something quickly? I think,
of course,
I think the question can be answered by anyone in the room today. It's not just up to me.
Of course.
I think all of us, So if the question is asked or you've got something to say, this is the relational space, right, in which all of us are equal knowledge generating partners. We can bring that to this space.
Yeah, I love that. Yes, Raj.
Hello, hi. Just wanted to say how so insightful the conversations are. So I'm Rajmal. I'm a quality, diversity, inclusion specialist actually in higher education. So I've been doing that for the last 20 years, and I just wanted to kind of agree really, and to say how well you put it, Divine. I've been trying to meet you in some form because I've heard lots of great things about your work. So it's a really great opportunity. But I think what you said about that, belonging and really truly being able to be your true authentic self, not having to code switch or mask or be in the workplace, I think that's so important. And that's something that I've really been trying to push in my work as well, that I think a lot of people will say, oh, we've got these mission statements and we've got these values and we've got these objectives, all these things that we're doing, where we're doing them anyway. So, but if you're not doing that with care and compassion and love, as you say, I think it's so important. And I've seen that firsthand through a big project that I'm just finishing off at the moment, that I see that, my employers said, well, we've done all these things though, but we've ticked those boxes. It's not about tick boxing, it's about showing and leading with compassion, as you say. So it was really just to say you put it so well, and it's something that I'm really championing at the moment, that we've got equality, diversity, inclusion, but I really don't think that belonging and that well-being is pushed enough. And I think that's actually central to actually achieving these aims, and for ensuring that people they feel like they belong. And actually there are so many business cases. It's not just it's a nice thing to do or it's fluffy and it's it's a nice to have. Actually it's essential, because it reduces attrition, it makes a more productive workforce, and all of those other things, as well as the fact that we do actually also have legal obligations as well to ensure that our employees or teams are actually those are being met. So it was just to say, yes, everything that I've been thinking and championing. You've just said it all so articulately, and it was just great to hear. And I'm really sorry I have to go, but I just in a couple of minutes. But I just wanted to kind of say, yes, I've been following your work, and I think you're doing some really amazing things. So thank you for championing that and really explaining it so well in a way that people really understand. I think that's crucial too. So I just wanted to say I've been, as I say, been waiting to meet you. So
thank you, Raj. Thank you so much. And yeah, let's get in touch. My email is available publicly, so just email me, or if you ask Helen and Andrea, they'll be happy to. And thank you. And I'd love to hear more about your work and the amazing work and projects you're engaged in as well.
I will do. I've connected with you on LinkedIn, so I don't know how often you use it, but
well, at the minute it's been exploding given the recent use being used. But I will accept that. Yeah, for sure. I'll be onto it.
No problem. Well, thanks
a lot.
Again.
Thanks, take care. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks, Raj.
Thank you.
Philip.
Thanks, Raj.
Yeah, hi. I've got really interesting. I've got a question. It's quite a big one. I've written some stuff down, so I'll try and put it into a sentence. I think it touches in your slowing down point, but as a country and as business, we're obsessed with growth. So everything is about GDP growth and fastest growth in the G7 and all these things. And that creates an environment where, businesses have to work harder, they have to be leaner, they have to do tough things. And I'm just wondering what role leaders, our government, politics, local or national, our mayor, so I'm just closing the door, have in slowing us down. And is there something else other than growth that we need to start measuring? Caroline Lucas, the ex-leader of the Green Party, she talks a lot about this, whether it's well-being or happiness, etc.
Yes.
So I'm not sure what the question is, but I suppose it's something around what does government, what does policy, what does local government have in saying that, we need growth, but it isn't everything. So I'm rambling a bit. Don't know what the question is, but there's something in there. Andrea, you can help
around, I just wondered whether it's about, is there another metric, a better metric, perhaps, that we can focus on? Is that where you're kind of pointing to, other than growth?
Yeah, it might be. I mean, I'm sick of people talking about GVA and productivity and the fastest growing and whatever, because it's frankly irrelevant. It means nothing to us mere mortals. And I'm just wondering, is it a language thing? Is it a policy thing? Is it I don't know. But everything we've talked about today there's a massive disconnect with a lot of business. And that's not a criticism. It's just where we are. That's decades of doing business. And I'm just wondering what role government, et cetera, have to sort of help us start to reset some of this stuff. I mean, it might be a metric. Sometimes you need something as blunt as that just to get people talking about this stuff. But you won't hear any of this. Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry for that. No, I was just going to say, and I'm wondering as well, just to help you out there a bit, whether, we talk about growth, but is there something that we're missing in the growth conversation? Because is growth not a consequence of what we were talking about today? And if it is a consequence of what we're talking about today, what is the metric that we can say, if you have high this, then you'll get growth, but we're actually creating a better
I mean,
better
growth
place to work.
To us people, growth in a very simple form means we can pay our bills, we can pay our heat, that we're not having to work 1,000 hours a week just to make ends meet. I mean, that stuff works. And if ultimately somewhere down the line that means that we're the fastest growing something in the G7, then great, but I don't care about that.
No.
It's a lot simpler than that, I think.
So how do you prefer to be called?
Philip.
Philip, what a great and exciting question for me. So I feel privileged that I have been working with organizations that are asking these very questions. The conversation that's not being had, so my work is on trauma and burnout, is actually what happens to the growth curve is the more you push for growth, the more growth you get for a time. And then what happens is burnout kicks in. So the more we push for growth, then the more you have people taking sick days off, burning out, in different industries, and actually that results in the antithesis of what you're wanting to happen. Some of the organizations I'm working with, the motto, certainly the work that we do, is human-centered leaders normalize rest. They encourage healthy life boundaries. Now, I don't know how far true it is, but years ago, you used to hear people saying, oh, at such and such a company, they've even got beds where people can take a little nap if they need to. The thing that's more mainstream that I do know is true are the conversations we're having in some organizations where they're now going to a 4-day week. And what they're realizing is even with 4 days, growth is becoming exponential in some of them. Because people have time to slow down, to rest, to recuperate. It's the narrative of the goose that laid the golden egg, isn't it? The more you want it to lay more, ultimately, you're going to destroy it. And this also then speaks, lastly, to the capacity to check regularly on emotional load of those we're working with within organizations, and especially in different professions, for example, like the caring profession, where burnout risk is high. I work with the police at times, with the military, and so on and so forth. And actually, so your point about we're measuring the wrong, because we're focusing on growth, but we're not looking at the impact that this focus has. Ultimately, it's gonna implode, and we're doing the opposite. There is in some of the papers that I did in different health settings, we used a measure called a mattering and anti-mattering measure. So it asks 10 questions, 5 of them about how much do you feel you matter in this organization, and 5 of them ask how much do you feel you don't matter. Now, what you can do is you can compare mattering and anti-mattering versus outcomes and growth. That's just an example of what you could do. And you might find that in certainly in the organizations I work with, that where in organizations people feel they matter, that's correlated directly to positive growth. And less days off sick, and so on and so forth and so forth. So it's a great question, and I think politically we need that shift. We need a paradigm shift. And it's not about growth, but it's about a healthier community, and growth will be a byproduct of that.
Yeah, I won't go on. I mean, I agree with all that. I think it's going to take a brave leader, a brave politician, a brave mayor to say, I think we might have got this a wee bit wrong, and we're not going to fix this overnight, but I think we just need to slow down. We need to stop talking about productivity and GVA. I'm still not quite sure what GVA means, but I use it as if I do. And say, yeah, we want to grow, but there's a right way of doing that, or a better way, or a more sustainable way of doing that. And I'm just not hearing it. And I suppose the challenge to fabulous people like you and us is how we get that in front of these people. You know, if Keir Starmer was on this call, he'd be talking about fastest growing rubbish and all this sort of stuff, and it just doesn't mean anything. But anyway, really good. Thank you. I'll mute myself.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you. And Mommy Jean, I think it's Jen, isn't it? Because I know Jen. Hi there.
Hi, my throat's not very good today. Apologies. I hope you can hear properly what I'm saying.
We can.
So another challenging question, picking up on you talking about working with workplaces to do with trauma and burnout. Now, I mean, I work now with a CIC and kind of work within the circular economy, but I'm a teacher actually of 25 years, and I ended up leaving through burnout. I just want to pose the question that you're doing great work, but we haven't got enough of these humanitarian leaders. And what if you work in an environment, and I did for many years, with heads that were super stressed, you know, Ofsted on their backs. And I kind of felt stuck. And if I'd have listened to you then, I'd have just felt really sad that I couldn't personally do anything about it. I was a leader, but not a head teacher, and not where I could make impact. So what if you are working in an environment with a leader who does not demonstrate humanity? What can we do as people, as humans who want that?
Mm. Mm.
And I am trying to lead because I'm a kind of, I'm a bit of a leader at my work. That's one of my titles. And I definitely lead with humanity. But I've not ever heard about a structure like this that you're talking about. So I'd love to hear more. And I'm naturally really good at that. But some people just, they've got like a red mist and can't see past. So in their stress and trauma. Yeah, there's quite a lot in there. So, and there's a lot of it going on. There's a lot of my experience, my age. I'm a brilliant teacher. I had to leave because I wasn't encouraged to grow. I was actually stopped. I was very successful in ICT, and I had a head teacher who didn't want me to succeed and put a stop to it. So what do we do in those environments? Do we just leave?
Gosh.
Thank you, Jen.
Jen, that's just such a powerful question, but also reflection. My instinctive first response is to want to smile and say, I'm hopeful that if I asked some of the students and the pupils you taught, they would say you made such a difference to their lives.
Yeah.
There's this part of me that wants to start there, right? And I support a lot of teachers, and 3 or maybe 4 over the years have come and have said, Divine, it's the end of term, I want to leave, I'm going to leave. And then 2 of them brought letters the following day from students who were saying, Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, you've made such a difference to my life. And they're working in impoverished communities. You made such a difference to my life. And the impact, and this, what I'm saying is leading to say, sometimes we're torn between the values we hold and the impact we do and how it's drowned by toxic systems and toxic leadership sometimes. So what do we do? The first bit for me is to invite those I work with certainly to think about, how do I build a community rather than individualism? Because if I do it on my own, I'll burn out. So in any organization I've gone in, I've tried to look for allyship. I've tried to look for other leaders who hold the same values, whether within the organization or externally, a place I can go to be replenished and just go, what a day.
Yeah.
What a day. A community like this, where you can just come and say, it's good to hear this. I recognize it, but it's hard. So that's important. Number one, centering, having a community rather than individualism. The second thing is for us to think about coming back to our values. When I feel beaten down and tired, I think, I want to remind myself why I'm doing this. When I was working in services where I was supporting children with learning difficulties, and it was really hard. And I'll come home and I'll go, do you know what? The management sometimes have been not seeing me or valuing my work. But you know what? Little Johnny or Mary, who don't speak, but who I work with, absolutely their faces beam when I arrive. That's why I'm doing this work. In academia, when I sit with students and I go to graduation and I know the struggles they've had and their parents are crying with joy, thank you so much. I think, that's why I do it. But you also raise, and this will be my last point, an important point, which is about how do we continue the fight to live another day? And sometimes we have to make the call to say, my heart is in the right place, my values are in the right place, but this is not the organization for me. And it breaks my heart, but I'm going to look for somewhere where my heart can sing and where I can blossom and I can make a difference. So both and, we do the best we can whilst we're there, but afterward the work is, we want you to continue the work. There's a lot of fear. We're living in a system where there's a lot of fear.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone on the call, other colleagues on the call might have something else to add, but I kind of feel that's, from our heart, that's, you can only do what you can do, and you have the right support structures around you to help you have some coaching, have some support, so that you can, because we do, I work with a lot of people who recover from burnout, and actually they continue to go on to do amazing things, having learned not to keep pushing in a system that would have thwarted their growth.
Yeah, but it brings sadness.
It does. It saddens my heart, because I sort of think of all the kids you could be, we've only just met, but you could be helping.
Yeah, and I loved it. I loved it. But
Thank you.
I'm doing other work now, which I love. So yeah, but there's still a sadness. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. And we have Rachel who would like to come in on the conversation. Rachel.
Thanks, Andrea, and thank you, Divine. As I'm listening to the whole session, it's just fascinating, really, and really resonates for me. And I've sort of studied leadership, and I do a lot of work with the NHS, and I've been blessed to really work with truly compassionate leaders. Actually.
Wonderful.
So it's been that's been a huge privilege in many ways. And I suppose this is some of the themes resonate for me. I think one of the things for me is around, the importance of compassion and humility, but also very much about looking after self.
Yes.
I think sometimes, for those leaders that are compassionate, do really want to do the best for others. Sometimes it's the strength. Sometimes we can give too much over. And actually, it's that balance between being burnt out ourselves because of that. And I think when we are working in environments that are pressurised, so for example, the NHS, the actual nature of the role itself is pressurised inherently. It's difficult to sometimes achieve that balance, because I think even with people that are truly compassionate to others, I think when we're tilting into the burnout stage, then we actually become people we're not, and so I think actually trying to protect well-being. We talk about well-being a lot. There's lots more said about well-being and attending workshops and so forth, but actually truly working in organisations that actually value and allow well-being to be front and really prioritised is really important, I think.
That's really wonderful to hear. And I agree with everything you've said. And a part of me thought two things. The first is, at the moment, I think there's a book by Tricia Hersey called Rest as Resistance. And I love these radical ideas around rest. That we can take rest as a radical act against the grinder culture. Like growth culture, like keep going. And we can assert humanity and reclaim power within ourselves by disrupting this constant need to produce, by marking out time to rest and to self-care. The self-care piece that you bring is so important, that we can say, look, I'm taking time to rest and to self-care. And what does that look like for me? And each of us will have different ways in which we rest and self-care. For me, it'd be going to the seaside and walking on the beach early morning when there's no one else there. So, I can just, or taking my saxophone out and, blowing a tune, and like my lungs feel like I've got no lungs left anymore from just like giving it my all, right? And each of us will have different ways. So that you raise a really important point, which is about self-care and rest. And then the third point for me is about communities of practice. Finding a space, I work as a psychologist, and for many times when I'm doing therapy work, I'm alone in a room. And when I worked in the NHS, I could be in a room on my own with clients all day, and I wouldn't see any other part of the multidisciplinary team, but it's having a community of practice, a community of other leaders where I can be resourced. And family comes into that, loved ones come into that in ways that we can grow for ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Incredibly useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Does anyone else have any comments or questions or insights they'd like to share, or things that have come to mind? Yes, we got, I don't know what, sorry, I don't know what your first name is. It's
Rima.
just Berry.
Yeah,
Rima, thank you.
I just wanted, well, it's more a comment, I guess. I love that you mentioned taking the pause as part of leadership skills, that hello and the pause. For me, that's a really super valuable skill just for being a better human being, to be honest, better parent, because people need to know that they've been listened to and that they matter, no matter what their age is. So, and the criticism I got very early on as a very young parent is, you don't listen to me. You're looking at me, but you're looking somewhere else because your mind's already on the next thing. And so I just wanted to really comment on being better at listening.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. And Rima, did you say your name was?
Yeah.
If I may ask a question of you, what do you think we might do, how we might do better to pause and listen?
Well, it is when somebody comes into the room, you're actually present and listening to them. There is nothing worse than your line manager rushing in 10 minutes late, looking at his watch while he's talking to you. It's actually the eye contact.
Yeah.
And how are you? And not thinking about what you're going to be saying next.
No.
Just clear your mind.
Yes.
Importance of being present. Yeah.
Yes.
But thank you. It's been really, really interesting.
No, I love that. Thank you. Anyone else got anything they'd like to share? Any insights that come to mind or any questions?
I wonder whether when Philip was talking, it connects with the idea of space, is that the value that we place on personal growth. And it comes back to the kind of importance of seeing people as individuals instead of organizational growth, but personal growth, and coming to the person. And what helps me to grow is to take that time and space. And if I'm not productive, I take time out and I go for a walk and I come back and I can be really productive because I've cleared my mind. And then it's sort of less time is more effective sometimes. And I kind of think that, that personal knowing yourself and helping as leaders to know others by asking the question, what helps you to grow? What helps you to do the best that you can do? How can I help you? How are you feeling today? Those kind of just normalizing that was something that I really heard. And making that a daily practice, because the environment that we set up changes on a daily basis. So I taking that time out to do that on a daily basis, I think.
I think we get caught up, don't we, in how busy we are and how little time we have. I think if I had a pound for everyone I coached who said, I don't have any time, I just run out of time. And, we have these narratives around time. And I think then when people come to us, it's very easy to feel like we don't have time to be present. We want to get on, or we want to carry on with what we're doing. We're feeling interrupted. And to, as Rena said, just kind of clear your mind. I remember one coach saying to me, be like a stone with ears. It's like you're just there, but there's nothing else. You're just there for that person. And just, like you're pausing time. For that person, and not get caught up in that narrative that you need them out the door, or what is it type thing,
And I love that. And I was thinking, by now you probably all know that I love different ontologies, right? Different worldviews. And I think it's the great Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, centuries ago had and I probably won't get it right, but it's one of my favorite sayings. And it says something like, it is as though he listened, and such listening as his enfolds us in a silence, in which at last we begin to hear what we are meant to be. Full stop. And for me, there's something that's really beautiful about when we really heard, somebody really listens to us, we finally hear the answer. And that's just, for me, that's just like, oh.
Yeah,
different.
that really gets you, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, the importance of coaching approach springs to mind in that context, because at the heart of it is everyone has their own answers. We don't need to have their answers.
Yeah. It is and we've gone kind of full circle, haven't we? And in that it goes down to that slowing down, that presence, that connection, and really being with that other human being and having that human to human connection, not boss to person who's doing another job, or just titles, egos left at the door, just that human to human connection, to allow whatever needs to happen. And I just wonder, if we did that more often, actually, how many issues would be dealt with a lot quicker, how many issues would never even arise, and all because we've just slowed down in that moment. I love that.
And do you know what? If I return to this love piece that for me encompasses a way of humanity and life and relationships, all relationships, but in terms of leadership, and drawing from some of the work we've done and some of Dihan's work around love over fear in helping conversations, we can draw three quick opposites, what we call the tensions of opposites. The first is that fear leads to micromanagement. Love invites trust. That's one. The second is fear closes conversations. Love opens them. I've been in meetings with people, we're no longer going to talk about that subject now because we need to move. Like fear kind of just closes conversations. Love opens them. And we do this, when I'm working with couples or families, like, let's have the conversation, right? Fear leads to cynicism. And this is really important for me for the times we're living in and for my work. Love sustains hope. And as a leader, then I ask myself, and working with other leaders, am I reacting from fear, or am I responding from humanity? I mean, it's a really key question.
Yeah. Such a powerful question, isn't it? And I just wonder what a difference that would make in all of our interactions if we just paused for a moment and asked ourselves that question.
Isn't there a poem in that, Andrea? Isn't there a poem called Leisure? What a life this if we have no time to stand and stare, to see where squirrels hide their nuts in grass, to stand and stare as long as sheep or cows. So the wisdom of kind of that piece about rest and just self-caring. And I think Philip's idea about, not just growth, but actually where our values and how we do that.
Yeah. And coming back to the individual human.
The other thing I've heard today is the importance of connection. Yes. It reminds me of a quote, and I won't get this right, but about two people sit in the room and a third person enters. And that whole concept of us as working together,
yes,
we can achieve more than we can on our own. And I think that you talked about allyship, you talked about community, and I think that the power of community in that space and the power of those relationships, the kind of relational aspect of work, what it means to work with, to share that power, to hold that as a partnership, and then to achieve greater than you can on your own. That was the other kind of thing that I've heard today.
Yeah, I think we've all had examples from that. And Helen, I think it was Sid Banks who said that, that when you get into that human to human soul connection, it's like someone else enters the room. And I think we've all had examples of where we've been in conversation and we've allowed our ego to just drop down just for a minute. It's not about what I know or what experience I've had or whatever, but just to allow to be in the conversation and just see what comes up.
Yes.
And quite often a third way just appears through the insight of both of the two people there, and fresh thinking and fresh ideas emerge that really do support growth and moving forward. Whereas if you just have their two egos battling it out, it just doesn't happen in that way. But in order for it to happen, there needs to be that presence, that slowing down, that connection, and that calmness. And when that happens, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, I love that. And it's a colleague of mine, Michael Lux, he wrote on what's called the magic of encounter. He's kind of looking at a lot of neuroscience and saying, if you've got two brains, what you've got is you've got two hemispheres, right? Left brain, right brain of this person, left brain, right. And what you essentially are doing in conversation and in dialogue, you are having what he called in neuroscience called interhemispheric dance, right, between the two hemispheres. And then something happens in the intersubjective space between something that is greater than just my brain on its own or your brain on its own. Like as a group, what we then have, and in coaching psychology is where the ideas of the mastermind comes in, is the collective of all these hemispheres coming together. Something is born that's great, and dialogue is so great for that, and leadership. So it's not I, the leader, have done it, or that person has done it, but that's the collective I am, because we are.
Yeah. I love that. Wow. What an amazing, I think that's just a fabulous place to stop, isn't it? I am because we are. It's like, I don't think it gets much better than that. Thank you so much, Divine.
Thank you for the invitation. It's been great.
Incredible conversation. It has, I think, inspiring just doesn't really cut it and sounds a little crass, but it just has been fabulous and moving and inspiring and everything. And I know that the people here have enjoyed it. I can see by all the emojis coming up on the screen.
I wonder if I could capture that, actually. I'm just going to ask people on a scale of 1 to 5 to say how useful they found today, just so we can capture some of those sort of straight away your thoughts, and then perhaps share with us one thing that you might take away from today in the text, if that's possible. Colleagues, to share in the text. I'm just going to pop the second one in. One thing that you're going to take away from today.
And I just send so many best wishes and the amazing work that's happening, and as leaders that we continue those ripples, right, and that will contribute to the change in the world that we so desperately need, and in organizations and in politics and in different spheres that we're all operating in.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking it back to a very practical workplace environment.
Yeah, thank you.
What it means.
Yeah, that's great. We just leave it a couple of minutes for colleagues to just answer the question. I think that would be great. And I think it's just incredible to have these conversations, with the leaders that I often coach. This is how they want to be, but they often feel like they're going against the grain. And I think having these conversations kind of normalizes it. It's like, no, this is the way we can lead, and it is good for us and good for humanity. And it's just so incredible to have these conversations. Yeah.
Thank you. There's some lovely comments coming through. Divine,
really
I hope that you're managing to pick these up.
Oh, thank you.
But kind of a reminder to slow down seems to be a common takeaway from today, and that coming back to the individual.
Absolutely. I like all of life comes back to the human connection. I think it's amazing, isn't it? How we kind of think, oh, that's okay in our personal life, and when we go to work, we have to behave completely differently, and I wear a completely different hat. And so, having that reminder that yes, we can be that throughout all aspects of our lives is really powerful, and such a great reminder.
And coming back to why am I doing this? Seems to have resonated.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
Thanks, Bernadette, for sharing the planning a conversation with a team member. She's decided to approach the conversation differently as a result of today. So thank you.
Great.
Yeah, it's having that permission, isn't it, to do it differently and say, actually, how would it best be for that client? I've had clients in the past that have taken members of staff off on walks or to a different place, or just really thought outside of the box, because actually they're meeting that individual where they are and meeting their individual needs, and it's having the permission to do that. I think everyone now, Helen, I don't know if you agree, I think everyone now has commented. So
that's brilliant. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Oh, I'm just going to put the end on. Okay.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. No, that's fine. I was just going to say for the end of the recording to join us next time, but that's okay. I can record that separately. So
don't worry, I haven't pressed
Thank you all so much. Oh, okay. We'll have to edit it now. Thank you so much, Divine, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
And yes, and do remember, if you're listening to this as a recording, to join us for future Lunch and Learns. You will find details of that on our website, which is Conversations for Change, with a 4 in the middle. So conversationsforchange.co.uk. And we, of course, will be sharing details of how you can join on our social media and on the website as well. But I do hope that you have enjoyed listening and taking part today. And do let us know on social media how you found it, and if you've enjoyed it, or what insights you've had, or what changes you're going to make in your organization, and that would be great. But thanks again, everyone, and we will see you next month for our next Lunch and Learn.
And thank you, Divine.
Thank you so much.
Your insights and wisdom. Yeah.
Thank you all. We did it all
really
together.
connected.
We did. It's lovely.
We did.
Thank you.
We did. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.